Welcome, everybody. We're back at it. Episode 3. Let's get it.
Ooh, let's talk a little dirty with Nana, baby.
Well, we had our first guest last week in Matt, and now sloppy second Steve over here coming in.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Very, very
Just never
sloppy,
on camera
Steve.
before. Never on camera.
Wow. To what do we have this pleasure?
Well, we have the doctor in the house. Welcome, Steve. Thanks for being guest number 2.
Yeah, of course, guys. Thanks for having me. I like what you're doing so far. It sounds like the league's liking it too. So let's add a little spice. Let's throw a couple Alex Berrigan insults in there and let's get this rolling.
We don't
I'm sure
have
he's
a
gonna
guest
like
number
that
3
comment.
lined up. Boys, just remember that there's no guest 3 yet. So I guess we'll see who steps up to the plate for the following podcast. But it's been fun. But yeah, let's get right into it here. I think we're gonna start off this podcast. Now that we have the doctor in the room here, let him talk injuries that may have happened in preseason and going into the 2022 year.
Yeah, of course. I don't want to start off by jinxing myself, but preseason injuries can be a real bitch here. Last year I had Dobbins go down in that second preseason game, and I was counting on him. So hopefully it doesn't happen to any of us in terms of big injuries.
Dude, that must have been a brutal loss.
Yeah, I didn't know what Najee was going to be at the time. So I was hoping he was going to really step in, and it just didn't happen. So hopefully it doesn't happen to any of us. So let's pray for some healthy teams going forward. No one likes to win against an injured team, right?
People forget this is the first year I have Cam Akers. People forget.
Yeah.
He tore his Achilles last year. I didn't have him either, dude.
Yeah, Dobbins is our big. I mean, me, Matt, and Hugo all said that he's in for a big year this year. Hopefully, so hopefully he actually stays healthy and we can actually see him play.
Yeah, I think he'll do good, but we can talk about some pre-existing injuries of like what people have coming into this year. But I think we had discussed with Hugo is that we're hoping to do this as some like gut reaction to some injuries when they happen. So can shed a little light, maybe hopefully some instant gut trades that can get the league stirring based off of some injuries and some reports. So let's get this going. But the couple of people that people asked about, one of them was, I believe, Thomas, right? The tight end on Washington.
Logan
and then,
Thomas, yeah.
Yeah, Logan Thomas. He's been on plenty of teams. He's been dropped. He's been picked up. He's been loved. He's been hated. But one thing we don't like to see is he tore his ACL. He tore it last year in December. So his surgery timeline probably January. That brings us, we're only about 7.5 months right now since the surgery. He's on the PUP list, which means he's limited in terms of what he can do in terms of team participation, drills, games, practices, things like that. So he's already off to a slower start right now. So the hope is that he will get back to normal. Problem is, I think it's going to be a while. A lot of times of what people are saying now, a lot of the studies, a lot of the research, a lot of what we push and work these days is 9 months at least until a full return to sports. So he's already a couple months shy of that. So obviously the NFL has some pressure. If they want to perform, paying him money, he'll probably come back a little sooner than that. When it comes to a guy like Logan Thomas, I'd be a little concerned if I was Alex or whoever it is that has him.
It's me.
Oh, all right. Well, I didn't mean that to be an Alex dig, but here we go. We're starting off. But so he, the problem is, right, is even before this injury, he's only been healthy full season in 2 out of the last 6 seasons. So when you already have this coming in, it looks like this is about to be another non-healthy season. He tore not just his ACL, but his meniscus as well, which limits how long it takes you after surgery to put weight on your leg. So you're already off to a bad foot there. No pun intended. The other thing here too, to think about.
I see what you did there, Steve.
Yeah, you like that? Throw a little spice. But the other thing to think about here with this too is he's a bigger guy. He's a tight end. I'm not sure the exact weight, but he's got to be at least 280 or something like that. So there's going to be a little bit more weight on that leg than someone like a Chris Godwin. Also the tight end position, right? It's going to be a lot more physical, blocking, things like that. The things I'd watch out for is I wouldn't expect any actual production from him till about week 4, week 5, around that mark, maybe even a little bit later than that. And I wouldn't be surprised if he misses a lot of practices and you're kind of faced with that gut decision of, do I play him? Is he going to be in or out those last minute calls before the game? because with a guy that big, he's likely to get some swelling when he starts ramping up his activity and his games. And a lot of times that swelling might prevent him from being able to do any actual movements or games there. So
Oh,
I'd be worried about him if I were you.
yeah.
Matt had asked about, it looks like we lost Hugo here.
Yeah, he'll
Uh,
join back. I'm sure.
Hopefully it pops back. But Matt asked about Godwin. Ironically, pretty similar timeline. He had his surgery early January last year. Little different situation for him though. He's relatively had a clean bill of health for the most part in his career. Little different position. He's plays outside, he plays slot, so there's a little bit more start and stop at the knee, which is going to be more of a pain tolerance thing for him. I think in terms of, they say he might be on track to play week 1. Again, still early. I wouldn't expect him to really be able to fully go until October, November. So expect a slower start, maybe a little bit of that load management stuff we see in basketball, where he's not playing a huge snap percentage. But overall, I think you have a much better chance of him having a more successful season and probably normal Chris Godwin by like week 5, week 6.
Yeah. I mean, Matt did draft Mike Evans too on that team, so at least he has somebody to play in the meantime. But
Yeah, he's got, I mean, if anything, him being out is just going to help to get a little more target share for Evans, right? So I don't think it'll
yeah,
affect him too much week to week point wise, but especially dynasty, you're always looking for, careers are short in football. You want to make sure it's not really a career ender or things like that. They both
yeah,
should bounce back, but different expectations for sure.
yeah. I would say definitely Godwin's a bigger blow than Logan Thomas. I mean, Logan Thomas has had one good season. After that, he hasn't gotten more than 60 fantasy points since like what
T-
2022 or sorry 2020. So
Yeah. And I guess it depends too, right? Like I don't, you're probably not relying on him to be your go in and out every week tight end
yeah,
right now, you know, where
no.
Matt, I think Godwin's a pretty pivotal part of his team. He traded for him a few years ago. And I think he's hoping that he does a lot for him. It'll be
I'm-
interesting to see when he's healthy though. I mean, having 2 receivers on the same team, if the Bucks get shut out, Matt's looking at some possible point loss there, but
Yeah,
I'm
I
sure
think
he'll
Matt's
figure it out.
done well to, obviously trade a decent amount to kind of, you know, still make him all right, even if he's without Godwin for a few more weeks. So
Yeah, he's deep enough now where he can hold on to it, but
I could see Matt even trying to trade Godwin too. So,
he's on his trade block, I believe.
oh yeah,
So he's definitely looking to do it. But I think at this point, as we get close to the draft, most people are looking to just see what the draft does for their teams instead of big trades. But you never
yeah.
know, they can happen any day.
Any other injury updates?
Uh,
Well, Zach
Vin-
Wilson, huh? What about
Vinny's groin injury is a little bit beyond healing. I've seen it firsthand and a little ugly. But
keeps
yeah,
asking
this
everybody for massages. It's getting weird at this point.
yeah, at this point he's been asking even when he's not hurt. So I think it's just he's pulling a Watson on us. But um yeah, the Zach Wilson reports are 2 to 4 weeks. I think that's super aggressive, to be honest. Uh, Matt had talked a little bit about it on the podcast last year. I think you guys, or not last year, last time you guys, one of you had identified him as like a possible breakout kind of thing, right? From
Yeah,
Alex's team. So the difference with the surgeries, right, is so he had a small tear in his meniscus. What they did is a trimming. So essentially, there's 2 types of surgeries you can have. One's a removal where they take a good chunk of it out. They usually only do that um, if you're younger, more athletic, someone like Zach Wilson. I think Vinny also had the same surgery. Not to say it's the same athlete, but you never know.
yeah,
But so the other one is a removal. So a removal means they actually physically take it out and take that whole chunk out, or a repair. I mean, with a repair, you're looking at way longer weight bearing problems. So basically, Zach doesn't have that. They're trimming it. They're just cutting out that piece of meniscus that he tore. They're just taking that right out. He also had a bone bruise too, which is, I think, going to be the bigger underlying cause here. Every time he gets tackled and he hits the ground, he's going to be feeling that for probably a good 6 to 8 weeks, I'd say. And in terms of the meniscus itself and the meniscus removal they're doing, he's gonna feel it with pivoting. So if we think about just dropping back in playing, right? Plus, they're not
yeah,
gonna rush him. I think they saw Matt White did okay last year without him. Flacco too. I know they have big like aspirations this year, but they're not gonna throw it out. They don't want to pull. They don't want to put him out too early and then risk something like a Burrow injury happening to him, right? So
yeah.
uh,
Definitely not
I don't
franchise
think
guy.
it's gonna. I think it's gonna limit him a lot more than 2 to 4 weeks. I think for him, realistically, I mean, just from what I see, a super athletic person isn't doing stairs comfortably until like 3, 4 weeks at that point, depending on what they're doing.
Does
So
does your leg still move when that happens? Like it's still not stable, right?
No, the meniscus is more just think of it as like a shock absorber in your knee. So it's just a little less cushion in there. But where someone like him and the strength he has, he's not going to notice it. It's not a stability component. It's still going to be pretty stable. It's a lot less severe than like an ACL or things like that. But, or any sort of fracture. But, I don't think he's going to be really ready to rip it and kind of play normal for him until about, I don't know. I guess it depends on when the first game timeline is, but I'd expect like late September, early October to actually see game action for him.
Yeah, it's just kind of shitty timing. I mean,
Yeah.
all
Pray
of a
for
sudden,
Mr.
like,
Bergen.
You're
Yeah.
telling me as a Jets fan, dude, it's like just
exactly.
pour one out every single time. You get a little hype, and then it's like there you go. But I
Yeah,
don't
it seemed
think
like this year the offense
Joe
might have been a little
Flacco,
bit more
though.
solid.
Yeah.
I think Joe Flacco's ready to come in, baby.
Yeah, and I mean, if Alex is relying on Zach to really make a difference this year, I think he should have a good backup option anyways. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
he's
a
got
preseason.
Carr.
It's just a
Davis Mills season.
Yeah, it's just a preseason, right? But I mean, you look at Zach's stat line before even that injury, it was like classic Zach Wilson of like first half last year. It was like 2 for 5 with a pick. So,
Yeah.
it's
And
not
Alex,
someone that's
I don't
gonna win
think
you a
Alex
game.
is really even going to be starting Zach Wilson this year, anyways. Like, even, I mean, unless he started like really breaking out, like, I think Derek Carr is going to be his guy this year. He's just
Yeah,
in too
Tua,
good of a spot.
baby. I fucking love Tua this
Tua
year.
Yeah,
too,
think
yeah.
it's I
Like,
think
I
it's
think
Carr
Alex
and
is
Tua
fine
first for
with
him. Yeah.
quarterback. Yeah, I don't. Alex has other problems to worry about. I think when it comes to quarterback, he's got no real issue there, at least for the
Yeah.
time being.
Good call on that one though. I forgot about that. I don't know if there's any other big injuries you guys want to talk about, or you just want to jump right into the draft.
Boys, I
Maybe
think it's
just
time. I
touch
think it's
on-
time.
I was gonna say maybe briefly just talk about like Drake London, right? Didn't Drake London, but just obviously because we're talking about drafts on the podcast, I figured that'd probably be one that
Yeah,
should at
that's a
least
good
touch
one.
on.
Do you sorry, I was definitely pretty long-winded on those other ones, but I get talking about injuries and I can just keep going.
Yeah, didn't he injured it on a
Good thing we don't have a view from the waist down, Steve.
Boxers only.
yeah.
There's no report in terms of what his injury is. So there's always a little concern to that. I mean, everything I've seen, they say injury's not serious, but he's not practicing this week, not playing this week. Maybe they're
Yeah.
just trying to limit his reps and stuff, but it's really hard
Definitely
to speculate
hold him
without
off.
knowing. But at the
He's all they got.
same-
He's all they got.
Yeah, but at
Yeah.
the same time, right? I mean, coaches do that right now too. They're trying to prevent that game planning where how many times have we seen like a hamstring injury in preseason, them downplay it, and then he's out for like 2 to 3 weeks regular season. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep.
So it's just something to watch for. But I don't think if you're thinking dynasty purposes, and that should be your primary thought on the top 3 picks, right? Is it shouldn't impact that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously he's one of the top guys this year. So when you hear about a knee injury of any sort, you get kind of a little scared.
Oh,
so-
definitely. Yeah.
But
Yep.
anyways, we'll move on. We've done this for everybody, and we figured we'll do it with pretty much every guest that we have on the podcast, Steve. But what are you excited about for the sleeper league coming in 2022?
It's a good question. I think this
It's
year
gonna be a big year, Steve. This might be your best year yet.
Yeah, could be.
I think it's a big year because I think a lot of people are a little more in tune to it this year. It seems like it's
There's
Dylan
some
winning
good
it.
teams out there.
Yeah, I think that it's a little bit more balanced. There's not really any super team stack stuff going on. Nothing against Dylan because like flags fly forever. Obviously, this kid's got his name on the trophy, but
Yep.
his kind
Props.
of like on
Champ.
his winning last year wasn't really expected, right? So in terms of just how he performed, he was never really seen as like the best
Went
team
all
at any
in.
point last year. So it's like one of those things that
4 seed, if I remember.
yeah, and I think when not to pull out crazy stats, right? But when I played him in the playoffs in the quarterfinals, the Dolphins defense outscored Cooper, James Conner, Leonard Fournette, and my defense all just on their own, right? So
Yeah,
it's like
that was
I
a
think like a
crazy
fluky
week.
win like that for people can get people excited about the league because it's just getting the playoffs, anything can happen, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think just the competitiveness I think will be good this year. The podcast too, I think people are gonna be more in tuned. I think just generally, right, as we're getting older, I don't know about you guys, but I'm trying to cut down my fantasy involvement. It just takes up a lot of time as we're getting older. So
Um,
I think Matt had mentioned like this keeps the friend group together and like gets people talking. So I think just as people cut down, they're just gonna focus more on this one. So I just think it's probably gonna be the most competitive year yet. There's not gonna be
Yeah.
like nothing against you, Marty, right? But you weren't really looking like a playoff hopeful after like 5 weeks, right? I don't think any team is gonna run into that this year. I think like there's gonna be battles for every
Yeah.
position.
Yeah.
every week.
Yeah.
Nice,
Cool.
dude. That's exciting, man. Well, we're glad that you're a part of this specific episode because this is a big one. This is the one I've been most looking forward to. I'm not gonna lie, because no one is more draft horny than I am. I think we should have the draft freaking after the draft, the actual draft. And I also think we should have a draft before training camp starts. That way it rewards the people that do their research. You know, I watch a lot of college. You watch a lot of college too, Steve. And there's a couple other guys that recognize these players. And so, not that it just rewards them, but we're just very excited about them.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I mean, it's a time of year that we all look forward to, right? Draft day. It's always a good time. A lot of food, a lot of football talk, and a lot of beer. So, I mean,
That's
I'm
it, baby.
excited about it. We figured
Yeah.
we'd just do a breakdown of the draft and, where we think players are going and
Yep.
to which teams, and maybe just a little discussion about, why we think they may end up where they do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and this is just quickly thinking what your team needs. Who knows if this is the actual order. I'm actually like, we're gonna save this copy, Marty, and see how close we get.
Yeah, we
Because
should
we're
add
just
this
gonna
up
throw
and
some
see.
names out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. It's a history one here too. We're making some history because it's the
Do
first
tell.
we're early in the league history, right? But I don't know if this is gonna happen very often. Back-to-back years of the same person having picks 1 and 2 overall.
Yep.
Who knows? Maybe if Dylan's picks fall the right way with all of them he got last this off season with that fire sale, maybe runs it 3 in a row, which would be pretty crazy. But
or maybe Vinny gets the curse. He took Alex's pick next year, so this year he's going to come in last place, and he's got Alex's pick too. So maybe.
yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Alex's
God, I
picks
hope
are
that
a
happens.
curse, dude. It's a curse, Vince. You think you made a good move, and you
Yeah.
might have, but you're going to tank this year. Just mark my
Yeah.
words.
Yeah.
In all seriousness though, if you get 1 and 2 and you hit on those picks, like it's gonna change your team, right? So Marty's in a really good position this year to make something happen and rebound as quick as you can. Because if you can get 2 star guys, stud guys, starters for your team, fill some holes. I mean, you don't really have to look back. It doesn't really matter if you had to trade picks going forward. It's if you can fill those needs now. Think about it. They're also going to be some of the youngest players in the league, right? So it's not
Yeah.
just something that's going to rebound you this year, years to come.
Yeah.
Is it too bold to say that if you have a first round pick, you have to hit on it in order to be successful in Dynasty?
I don't necessarily think it's you have to hit on it, but I think if you were to look at the teams that didn't hit last year, I got some interesting stats on that. I
Ooh,
guess
do tell.
I think if we look last year, right? I know we want to get into these picks pretty soon here, but if we look at last year, it's arguable what was misses and what wasn't, right? But if we look, there's some pretty standout misses for me, right? One is Trey Sermon, right? Which
Not good.
Alex didn't
Yeah.
make the playoffs with. One was Terrence Marshall, who I know you made the playoffs, Hugo, right? But your record was not a winning
The
one,
jury's
right?
still out there, Steve.
So and then so when we look at stuff like that, and then the 2020, there actually wasn't too many misses, believe it or not, in terms of just how people did. But one was Ruggs was a clear miss in terms of even before the whole crazy stuff, he just didn't really produce the way they thought he was gonna.
Yeah.
And Alex didn't make the playoffs there. So I think
People
it's
forget Alex has a Henry Ruggs jersey because
yeah.
he's a supporter.
I think he threw
Yeah.
that in the trash by
Yeah.
now. I'm pretty sure.
But
he
you
did.
can, but it can set you back, especially if you know your pick, right? Marty, you know your pick in 1 and 2, you probably have at least a good idea of at the very least what positions you want to use, right? So in your head, you have
And still,
these-
it's mine is still up in the air. Truthfully, it's kind of been a tough decision for the second pick for me, but I guess we'll see. I'm gonna take it in the moment and just kind
Yeah,
of trust my gut.
Totally in the moment. But Marty, let's get into it because number one here, I think it's as obvious as it gets. Please do the honors.
Yeah, I mean, when running backs come into the league and you're hurting at running back, like you obviously got to take the top one on the board there, and that's Breece Hall. So, I mean, I don't think we really have to go into much detail or
Nope.
much depth about
Set it and forget it.
Breece Hall,
Set it
but-
and forget it.
yeah, I think there's definitely
Slide him
the
in that spot there, Marty.
biggest talent there, right? You look at I know Combine doesn't make plays on the field, but his Combine numbers were pretty much blowing every running back of the last 5 years off the table. The only problem is I would be, not that it would steer you off the pick, but I don't think it's as much as of a slam dunk of him being a workhorse
Mm.
as other top running backs have been in previous
Is
years.
that some Jets insider knowledge right there, Steve?
Well, I think if you look at it, right, I mean, Michael Carter was drafted 2nd or 3rd round last year. They like what they saw from him. And if you look at what Michael Carter did best in college, I know you're a college guy as well,
Yep.
Hugo, is he actually split carries with your boy, Javonte Williams, in
Javonte,
college.
baby.
They were pretty much 50-50,
UNC.
and they were 50-50 in their carries, and they both had 1,000-yard rushing seasons their last year. So I think
Both of them were so good in college.
I think they're
dude.
designed to kind of have Michael Carter be a 50% guy. So
Yeah.
but I think
Yeah.
talent wise, like Brees Hall has a lot of that home run potential. You're going to see a lot of big plays. So
Yeah.
I'd expect some pretty, especially
Yeah.
PPR wise.
Yeah,
And I
for
think
sure.
Can't go
honestly,
wrong
like
there.
nowadays, especially in the league, like that's where a lot of teams are going, right? Like now it's not really the workhorse kind of league anymore. I mean, there's definitely some exceptions to that, but I mean, I'd rather him have like a 60-40 split or
Oh yeah.
something like that. But and I think that probably could be the case with Hall, but when they're the workhorse guy, like it makes me nervous. Obviously, like McCaffrey situation, like if they're getting just too much work, obviously a higher risk for injury. So
Yeah, that's a great point. Maybe it just keeps him healthier longer and you get
Yeah.
more production. Like there's something to be said about efficiency, right? If he gets 10 carries, but he does a lot with them, like that's all that matters, right?
yeah, exactly.
So for number 2, Marty, because you're right, you do have a very tough choice. Do you go running back, receiver? But this isn't the actual draft. You ain't gonna have to spoil any strategy or whatever, Marty. So, Steve, who do you select with Marty's pick, with pick number 2?
Yeah, I mean, these are all not to be taken as full draft advice. I hold no accountability for if you take this pick and you whiff. But I mean, if I were you, I like the idea of going to running backs and just dipping your feet in the pool there, where there's not too much of a difference with the wide receivers. There's certainly some that might play a little more off the start than others, but at the same time, I guess it really depends. I know you have good wide receivers, but my problem, if I were you, if you take Kenneth Walker here, you're putting so much into that Seattle offense that is just one of the biggest unknowns this offseason, right? You have two
Big
big
time,
wide
big
receivers
time.
coming in from them. You got Lockett, you got Metcalf. If you have the 3 stars, if you count Kenneth Walker as a potential one, on a Drew Lock or a Geno Smith-led offense, it's going to be
And
hard to
are we
rely
really
on week to
counting
week.
on Rashad Penny? Are we?
Yeah, I don't think Penny is going to. I mean, he's shown he can't hold up a season, but they
Yeah.
want him to be the starter. So I know Dynasty, you're looking long term here, but I'd be a little bit scared to go Walker. I know we talked about that London injury a little earlier, but if I'm you, I'd take London. Target share wise, I mean, I could barely name the next wide receiver on the depth chart there in Atlanta. Patterson, I'm sure we'll get into as the pick comes up, but his time's probably going down a little bit. They're not using him out wide anymore, they said, really this year. I think that has to be your play between him and Pitts. I mean, let's say they throw the ball 60 times a game. He's got a lot of targets coming his way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're going by best available strategy here, Steve.
Yeah, I think there's a need there, but like Marty said, he has plenty of picks. So part of what we're doing with this mock, right, is considering team needs and team usage. Marty's got his name's plenty times up on this sheet on the left there. So he's going to be able to fill some running back holes later.
I agree with you for sure. Best wide receiver available. How can you not? Marty, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I like, and that's kind of the decision that has been weighing on me, right? And between Walker and London, obviously, having a lot of running backs is a good thing because it's such a injury-prone position. So it's not going to really hurt me to take Walker. But to Steve's point, like that offense, I think it's going to struggle this year. Kind of same with the Jets too. So it kind of scares me. Honestly, the top 3 offenses: Seattle, Atlanta, Jets, good players, but bad teams. But
that's always a tough one because you want good players on good teams. That's the success, what leads to success, mostly. So it'll be tough, but I mean, if you get stuck with Hall in London, that's not too bad either, Marty.
Yeah,
So,
and like London, I think he's gonna be a big playmaker pretty much
yeah,
right away on that team. I think with Kenneth Walker, it's probably gonna take him a little bit longer
yeah,
to be a real valuable asset when it comes to a starting player. But I think Drake London will do that pretty much right away. So
yeah. Sounds good. So let's move on to number 3 here. And Steve, this is your pick. You have back-to-back years, top 3 picks. I don't know how you did it. Um, well, I remember this trade vividly with Matt Dispenza on how you got this pick, actually. Kudos to you for getting it, because that Derrick Henry deal, how you got Derrick Henry and this number 3 pick blows
Different
my
deal.
mind.
Different deal. This was I
Oh,
traded
was it
him.
different?
Yeah, this was Josh Jacobs.
Josh
And
Jacobs
who's his backup? What's his name? I forget.
and Kenyon Drake.
Kenyon
Kenyon
Drake
Drake.
Yeah,
for what's his face? Michael Carter, who at the time looked
yeah,
awesome, and he's taking a stock down now, but
yeah.
and
And
what
number
ended
3.
up being number 3. So I still
So
feel
this,
comfortable
Yeah.
with that pick.
yeah.
But
So this is a nice pick. I'm gonna go ahead and draft this one for you, because your worst case scenario just happened with Drake London off the board. That is who belongs on your team. And I think Marty just stole him from you. So something you don't need is a running back here. And I think you know that you're stacked at running back. Unless you draft another one just to hoard him, dude, then you have a big time wide receiver problem. But you need the receivers right now. Amari Cooper and Deontay just not cutting it as your number 1 stars. Of these players, I think you got to go with. Would you honestly take a chance on Jamison Williams here? That's who I'm gonna go with for Steve, because this is a bold prediction, Steve. This guy healthy is a home run hitter, and that's exactly what you need. He has the path to take over number 1 right away, from Amon-Ra St. Brown, directly right off the get-go once he comes back healthy. And just imagine what we saw last year with Jamar Chase catching bombs from Burrow. It's Jared Goff, who cares? But deep threat, bro. And I'm gonna go with Jamison Williams here for you. Your thoughts?
yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna give away too much, right? I think Marty's
Yeah.
in the same boat where we want to talk, but add a little like intrigue to it, right?
Little mystery.
Ooh,
I think
a
in
little
terms of
mystery.
we'll talk about the player himself. I think Hugo, you watch plenty of college here. If he hadn't torn his ACL, I think there's a pretty good chance he's a top 5 pick going into
Yeah,
this draft
easy,
in the real draft.
easy
So
number 1 or number 2 wide receiver off the board, without a
he
doubt.
would have left Drake London and honestly Garrett Wilson as well
Yeah,
in terms of that. I think terms of long term, right? It depends on your team needs. If you feel like you can stash somebody like that, he's not someone that's going to provide you any sort of instant thing. I know Marty talked about London most impact ready right now. I think we talked about ACL injuries earlier. It's going to be a while before he's 100%, and they're going to take it slow with him because they spent some serious draft capital on him.
yeah,
But I think 1, he has that home run potential, and 2, I know it's Goff now, but if they have another bad year, they didn't really take a quarterback in the draft this year. They have another bad year next year. There's a chance they get one of the top guys like a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud. Ironically, Williams played with both of them in college because he
yeah.
transferred from Ohio State to Alabama. And we've
That would
talked
be
about
wild, dude.
that whole
Comes right in.
It's
combination.
crazy.
I mean, we got Burrow and Chase, right? I know these like college combinations soon, Carr and Adams. So he could have it with either the top 2 quarterbacks next year. So I think dynasty potential is really high. It's just a matter of are you willing to
Dynasty
sit?
potential's high,
Yeah.
dude.
It's just a matter
Massive.
if you're willing to sit on them, and is the potential that much higher than the next wide receiver, right? They all
Yep.
come with some question marks, but so I like the pick. The only thing I would say is based off of the team we're speaking of drafting here, we'll talk about it later, but I did just get a 2nd rounder in mid-second too. Part of the thinking and possibility is I may
up.
not need to take a wide receiver here, and I could just take a wide receiver later because it is such a deep wide receiver draft if I did want to hoard running backs, where
Yeah.
everybody's always looking to trade for a top running back. I mean, Hugo, you know it yourself. Marty, if you have, how many trade offers have you gotten from running backs over the years, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. It's always better if you're going to stash one position, that's one position to stash, right? So
Yeah.
who knows
People
what's
are always
happening
looking for
there.
running backs. Injuries happen often with them, and all of a sudden, if you're the guy that has a lot of them, look at Matt. Matt's making tons of moves. So,
Yep.
but
Exactly.
Yep.
yeah, I don't know how I feel about that pick. Truthfully, I feel like knowing Steve, I feel like and knowing his team, just looking at it, I know Steve's trying to win this year. I think he's gonna go for a guy that I think he can start right away. I think Steve's been eyeing Burks and yeah, if it's
Someone's
not
gotta
Burks,
take
it's
over for
Walker.
him.
But
But we'll get to Burks when he comes on.
I think Steve has that
next-
regret of trading away AJ Brown, and he's
I
gonna
dropped
get the
him. I
next
didn't even
pick.
trade him.
He looks
I
Or
dropped
nice
him.
in an
Yeah,
Eagles
sorry.
uniform.
Yeah, rub
But,
the salt on there.
guys,
Vinny too.
Anyways, we'll
can
move
I
on.
deem this the most important pick in the draft?
Well,
Gotta be.
it's
It's gotta be, right, Steve?
Yeah, because I think you look at the top teams. I mean, Marty's got 2 chances to hit. He feels good about his team. I mean, Alex is the most team in flux right now, right? It's like if you
Yeah.
need to start hitting
He's
on
in
some picks here.
transition, but in
where
a
you're gonna be-
positive way. Positive way.
Yeah, stock's up, right? But if you start missing on these, I mean, you're looking at he's gonna be in the same position another 2
Yeah.
years, right?
Alex
He's gonna start winning at
kinda-
some point.
Marty,
and
take
no
it
offense
away.
to Alex, but he's kind of sold his soul for 4, 8, and 10, right? So,
Yeah.
and to Steve's point, there's been some trouble with drafting in the previous year. So this is really where he's got to come up big. And I think if Walker is available, that's who Alex is taking. Like, there's no doubt about it. Running back wise, he needs another piece. And if Kenneth is on the board when it gets to him at 4, I think it's the obvious decision for Alex is to fill the missing piece to the puzzle, right? So I know we've already kind of talked about Walker, but Rashad Penny, like, again, I just don't think he's going to be able to stay healthy for his full season. So all of a sudden, Walker is going to be
Yep.
the next guy.
Alex
up.
needs that
So,
running back too.
Yeah.
No brainer to go running back here.
we'll keep
Yeah.
it simple here and say
I
Alex
agree with you there.
him.
I think his thought in moving up to 4, where he doesn't have another pick till 8, is I think his thought probably is he wants Walker, but I think he'd be willing to reach for Cook possibly at that time too. I think just the
Yep.
potential to pair another like pass catching PPR running back with Swift, who took a huge step forward last year, is just something that's too good to pass up.
Yeah, I would
Yep.
say if I'm Alex, and I'm thinking of Alex's head right now, but if Walker's there, he's going to take him. If London is there, he's definitely taking London. And I think that's where Alex's mindset is. I think he wants one of those two right off the board. But truthfully, I mean, there's a lot of great receivers there. So I think, honestly, pick number 4, he's got a lot of great options.
Yeah, a lot of great options, and it does again. It has to be running back in my mind, but if London ever were to fall there, absolutely Alex would take him.
Yeah.
So guys, we're running out of time here on the time affair.
Yeah.
Part 1 here. So before we start jumping on the next one, let's take a break right here and then pick number 5.
What do we have for time?
Coming up.
We have to cut this one short, so we have about a minute here. So
Yep.
Oh wow, okay.
we'll wrap this up and then we'll just do part 2 and just keep it going.
All right,
So
see you guys part 2, baby.
thanks for tuning in.